All right. This is very formal, but thank you so much for the introduction. So yeah, Lisa and I are going to be speaking to everybody today really about paving the way toward a unified complaints experience for Torontonians and what that has looked like for us. So we're going to really just talk a little bit about us, why complaints, why it's important, a bit of a background context, some challenges and opportunities, and then a Q&A. And if you would like to join us in our pitch activity, you're more than welcome to join us. So, hey everyone, we mentioned earlier, we are service designers that worked on the complaints project with the customer experience division. So really 311 Toronto. Also for those in the room, if I'm in a bad spot, let me know and I will move and shimmy over. But I'll let Lisa maybe add something else a bit about her if she wants to.
I'm Lisa. I'm relatively new to the city. This is actually my first year, my first project. Argerie and I have a lot of fun at work, as you can see, and we'll share more with you. It has been a really wonderful learning experience. And I think that was part of the enthusiasm of just sharing in this space, because I was not that long ago that I didn't know anything about the things that I was doing. So we're really looking forward to just sharing some of the things that were maybe surprising or delightful for me and for Argerie.
Okay, I just have to turn on my video, but I don't know how to do it without stop sharing. So I might have to stop. No, it's because I'm joined by a browser.
Oh, but
oh, no, that's not mine.
oh,
We can stop sharing for a second. It's okay. We can reshare. That's okay. I can do it now. Let's figure it out.
That angle is so funny.
All right.
Like someone's
no worries. Hello for those online. Okay. Awesome. Let's do it again. All right, so maybe I can quickly just chat a little bit about myself too. So I have been with the customer experience division, I guess just around 2.5 years. I started in March 2022. A little bit more about me. I'm also doing my master's part-time in strategic foresight and innovation. So if you're curious about systems thinking and foresight, come talk to me. Just a shameless plug. All right, maybe this is a show of hands for those in person, and maybe virtual, you can just say like why in the comments, but we would love to know how many of you have contacted 311 Toronto before?
That's actually a lot. That's like more than half of the room. That's pretty cool.
I feel like the awareness is pretty high with this group and we love it. And if you're not aware of 311 Toronto, that's totally okay. Oops. Come on. All right. So a little bit about, I guess, 311 Toronto and what the customer experience division does. So we have over 600 service requests and general inquiries. So we really are that first door for many people into the city. We answer a lot of questions. We redirect people if we need to. We have a lot of people who work in our contact center, which is located in this building, actually. And it's everything from that images of, picking up garbage to needing to put in a request for a tree or a pruning for a tree. These offerings are available across various channels. So we have our live chat, email, the mobile app, 311 Toronto mobile app. It does exist. Maybe you can download it today if you don't already use it. Our social, our counters, our phone and web, and those do have various there's various aspects of them, but we do offer a lot of channels. And ultimately, through these channels and the contact center, we facilitated over 1.3 million interactions with the public in 2023. And that's a pretty large number because we are a large city. So yeah, some of our divisions are Toronto Water, our transportation services, but oh, so much more. It's also our birthday today, so happy birthday.
Not me and Argerie's. It's
yeah, not ours.
Birthday.
311's birthday. Our colleague over here who's sitting in the audience told me that when I told him, we're presenting at Civic Tech this evening, he's like, did you know it's 311's birthday? I'm like, I did not. So little shameless plug, we were established in 2009, and I think that's pretty cool. So going into complaints and how does someone make a complaint? Well, the public calls 311, and in this case, we're maybe giving an example that someone was rude. Really, there's a lot of different ways that you can make a complaint today. At the moment, you might figure out the division and you'll follow a specific divisional process. Uh, the customer experience division, 311 Toronto, also does intake for various complaints or divisions rather, but we're not all yet integrated. And Lisa, feel free to chime in if you ever feel like anything's missing. So, what are we really trying to do? We're ultimately trying to create a unified process here. The person experiences an issue regardless of where they are in the city, regardless of the issue. And we're trying to figure out how to make sure that information trickles down to the right area. And through our Service Excellence Committee, we are supported in really this motion and the work that we're doing to really create a unified process and ultimately a centralized complaints process from an intake perspective and much more. So we have a few objectives, and just to kind of quickly go over them, but we are looking at a pathway to standardize a process across divisions. We want a consistent and uniform experience for customers, clarity for internal staff, and intake complaints end to end through our back-end systems. So what do service designers do in this project? And that's really funny. I actually forgot to add an image. As you can see, it says need image. Didn't finish my homework here, but essentially, here, we'll do that. Makes it look prettier. I think, Lisa, did you want to talk to this one? I couldn't remember. I'm going to do it. It's all good. So I think there's two ways in which service designers are involved in this project. And the first is some things that maybe seem a little bit less tangible, a little bit less technical, and that's really showing up with empathy, making changes to a cumbersome and difficult process, relationship building, and then advocating for customer and divisional user experience. So what that really looks like is, in terms of relationship building, is having our weekly meetings with our internal stakeholders to figure out what their needs are, what their wants are, what their desires are, and oftentimes meeting them with, what is feasible as well. What can we do today versus maybe a year, 2 years out? I think showing up with empathy has been really, really critical when it comes to understanding where people are, not only for our internal stakeholders and our actors, but also members of the public. When we did usability testing, for example, which I can get into in a moment of what that means, it was really important for us to, not just nod and say we understand, but really taking those learnings of, okay, well, this is what people are experiencing, and how can we take that forward and not turn it into a number, but turn that story into that change point that we need to make meaningful change. So I guess that goes into a little bit about the technical side of things of what a service designer has or might do on this project. So there's a lot of design strategy. We have usability tests. There's content writing. There is facilitation, heuristic evaluations, and I would say low either digital or analog designs, fidelity designs. So when it comes to usability tests, a lot of the times they are done remotely, and it really just includes a member of the public sharing their screen, typically on a laptop or a computer, and they are just really talking out loud and telling us how they are experiencing that end-to-end journey and what it's like for them. What do they think about where things are positioned? What do they think about the content itself? Is it easily understood? And we often ask them in a really semi-moderated format and about their experience, ask clarifying questions, and usually want to know, how would you want to change it as well? Yeah.
Just to give some background context, so I think it's a smooth outer front. You call 311, they say, what are you calling about? They figure out your problem, they send it on its merry way. However, as you might imagine, it's much more a complex beast on the inside. You see a tree needs to be pruned. How do I tell the person who's all the way going to prune the tree what they need to do, what's exactly happening? And then how do I relay that information all the way back so that if you call to follow up, we're able to see it? And then how do we also do that through this online interface? So for many of you who have called 311 or potentially use the kind of online experience, we have, over 600 requests that you can make, but obviously the city offers hundreds and thousands of services, not all of which are represented online. And so, we have this idea of integration within our division, which basically just means we're all sharing information, and that takes time to establish. We got to make sure that, whatever we have can plug into however they receive. We have many different operational units running different things, and they use different tools. Some people are like, I just receive emails, and other people are like, I have this other tool that helps me and take the work. And we work with these divisions, we figure it out so that we can relay the information smoothly. And ultimately, kind of the vision is to have the seamless experience that you have, that, you're like, yep, it's the city. They do everything from picking up the trash to making sure that people are all right on the street corner when it's cold. And that we're able to kind of share all of that. And that looks like what Argerie said, like a lot of content writing, helping our agents make sure they can navigate the complexity, and give good answers and good information inside and out. And some of the challenges and opportunities within this project. So when we were bringing complaints on board, so this gets into the whole kind of like psyche of the project. Right now, you're able to make many different requests, which for you can call it any which way, but we were getting a bunch of challenges. What if you made a request and then you had a challenge with your request? Like, oh, I've made this 5 times now. Like, why isn't it getting done? Or basically you're having a problem on top of your problem, or you're having a specific problem that isn't like, okay, I need you to do this task. Like, oh, I experienced something. I was biking along and a city worker is, I don't know, behaving inappropriately. And so we needed a way to kind of intake this other information. And one of the impetuses of this that Argerie was speaking to earlier was, because right now we have so many different ways that you can contact the city outside of 311. Also, a lot of people were getting some personal emails that they were like, oh my God, I don't know how to tell the tree person to prune the tree. Why don't we have one way? And so this was really our first building block. And we got 5 divisions onboarded onto this very specific way of doing things. And the hope is to lay the roadway so that, we're able to kind of offer a unified experience. But one of the challenges with navigation, there are many ways people can come through Google, they can come through a friend, they can come through Twitter for people to try and figure out how to get to us. And so, making sure that we're communicating at all of those different entryways, what to do was one of those things. End-to-end visibility. So making sure that we can get the status or the up-to-date notes from the people that are working on the case. Equity. So this project was also really about making something accessible online, I think, creating a broader set of services. But really, when it comes to something like complaints, things can get really serious. And as we learn through usability, there are still some softer elements that we need to be taking care of and talking about, which include staff training and the way that the complaint gets handled outside of us being like, yes, what is your complaint? Let me write it down. As well as trust and accountability. So I think this is a really fascinating general design challenge for the digital space. Obviously, if you have a person talking to you on the phone, they're able to exercise empathy, but what does that look like if you have a more serious problem? You're filling out an online form. Could that feel warm? What does that mean? Are some of the challenges that we still work through after going live.
So we just wanted to talk a little bit more about what we did so far. So going back to the multiple access points on the web and mobile app, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. And we really just wanted to, again, shameless plug to the 311 Toronto mobile app. Download it if you've never used it before, because not only can you submit your request through there, but also any complaints that you have for those integrated divisions that we were speaking to. We also, by bringing these complaints online, what it really means is more complaints means more are accessible in different languages. And that's not only through the web, but also through the contact center. So if you don't know, but if you do call 311 Toronto today, we do have language services available in over 180 languages. I got the thumbs up. So there are regardless of that channel, there are language offerings, which I think is really, really important to note. Our complaints process can be a little bit tricky, but what does happen today is if there are issues with a complaint, it means that that can be further escalated in the right path. And we also brought a new simplified form for those divisions that we do work with. And I think it was just important to kind of highlight that we worked on getting that online as well. A little bit of what we learned. We learned a lot more than these 3 things, I promise, but these are some things that stood out to us and being on this project together. Team members wear many hats, and being agile and adaptable has been really important, I think, in making sure that we launched. Onboarding divisions and creating policy or standards simultaneously is complex, but it's not impossible. And it's important to err on the side of over communication.
Yes, I was learning everything because I was new. But I think honestly, the biggest learning for me coming from outside was just how complex it was inside. And as I learned more and more about my stakeholders, if I wore my old hat, I would be like, okay, you put a form online. But I was really coming to appreciate how much back-end effort it takes to just make sure, you're working with each division to say, okay, who's going to check this form every day? What happens if this happens and this happens and that happens, to provide a level of accountability. And we're going to continue working on that coverage, but it was fascinating. We worked with a lot of people.
We sure did. So that's really brings us to the end of our quick presentation, and we wanted to hold some time for Q&As.
Yes. And then if you need to share that one, that's totally fine. Cool. So we have about 10 minutes for Q&A. So for those of you online, I'll just ask you to put a Q or any other letter in the chat once again to queue up. And we're going to go back and forth from online to in-person. So we'll start with in-person if there's anyone who has a question. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you for the talk. Personally, I think a lot of 311 inquiries will involve location issues or data. Like, how do you deal with hundreds and hundreds of location data? Like, how do you process it? Do you have any tips for other people?
I think I caught most of that. So it's about location and how do we make sure it gets to, I just want to make sure I understand.
How do you manage those location data, with that many places to handle?
Yeah, so we do have things that are on our backend. We're able to look at things from a location basis. Some of our service offerings are obviously very location based. So for example, a transportation related issue or a water main break, and those things we're able to see. And this is also the system that we use to look for duplications or multiple people kind of reporting the same thing. So it is a data point we have on the back end that we're able to just correlate back to a series of requests or a history of requests. I don't know if Abby, you want to add on that at all?
Well, I mean, as part of sort of our intake process, we use the city's geospatial environment as for the intake of service requests. So every service request that's intaken, the address is validated so that we can send it to downstream systems. And then through that, there's various processes that are built into that. So making sure we're checking for duplicates. So based on the location, the request type, we have a pretty intense algorithm that will look at duplicate patterns and be able to attach different tickets. So as you can imagine, we can have 100 people reporting the same pothole. And the data model figures that out. So it'll have a parent request and multiple child requests that are attached to it. And that's how we sort of orchestrate that workflow, if that makes sense.
Awesome. And Alex, do we have a queue online?
Yeah, the first queue we have is from Jason. Yeah, I was curious. You mentioned like all the languages that are handled. I was curious on like how the translations are handled for delivering all the different languages.
Little,
That works too.
That works. Okay, I know a little bit about it, but I do know we have a service that is supported by 311 Toronto. So if you call the contact center and you need a language offering, they dispatch someone through. So essentially the agent will ask the question in English, the person will translate it, the member of the public will give their response, and then the translator will translate back into English, and that is how the notes are inputted into the system. So hopefully that answers your question or
Great.
part of it.
Thank you.
Awesome. And just for everyone, I know there's like a lot of hands going up. We're gonna do breakout after.
We do have a breakout today, so we can keep chatting. We do have some specific questions about complaints, but if people have general.
We didn't show you
Ooh.
anything, and we spoke vaguely because we just want you to like do it, and then you can tell us. But I think we'll take that as our pitch. So if you guys want to pop by our pitch.
Cool.
Thanks very much for the amazing talk. I'm curious if you could have your whole team stop working on whatever they're working on right now for a month, what would you have them do to, in your opinion, make 311 better? Whole team for a month, they would do whatever you want. What would that be?
Feels very
And it's
real.
your personal opinion. You don't have to ground it. You don't have to argue for it. In your opinion, what would that
We're
be?
still recording.
No, we're not recording.
No, that is a great question. No, it's fine. If I have to think about that, but Lisa's like, I know.
You also don't need to be serious.
No, I know. I think for me, okay, I think there's always a lot to learn as a service designer and as a service, somebody who is new to the city. I think for me, I would love to just like sit back and better understand even our own complexities at the city and how we work, kind of like a government 101, so to speak. I think it's really foundational to our work and understanding, again, our complexities, our intricacies. And I think it's kind of like vital to when having like internal discussions as well, because you're able to understand where your other partners are coming from. So I think being new to the city, sometimes that can feel like a bit of a disadvantage. If you haven't yet.
There's like a load of really boring stuff, right? Things could be more efficient. There's a bunch of infrastructure stuff, actual system stuff. But I think one thing that I find deeply fascinating is how much data we collect and how, we're a front door. At the end of the day, I'm not the person who goes and picks up the tree for you in the end of the day. And many of the times we are the people that field the feedback that ultimately comes back about all of those services, and being able to make more like funnel that information through the org, whether that's best practices. And it's been really meaningful engaging with all these divisions, because we'll be like, oh, this person has a call center, that person has a call center, maybe they should talk to each other. And we've been able to facilitate things like that. So I think that would be my answer, like better making deep, meaningful use of the data, interpreting it to help our counselors, the public, as well as our own teams kind of understand our own operations better would be deeply meaningful.
Cool. Gabe has just let me know that the breakout is in person only. So I'm going to take 2 questions from online. So sorry, everyone in person. Very exciting breakout though. For those of you online, who is next in the queue?
All right, next in the queue is Luke.
Hey, folks. Thanks so much again for a cool presentation. It's fascinating to know how much work went into this. I know that sometimes this is referred to as compliments and complaints as well. And just like, I don't know, I kind of want to know what you've learned about compliments. Like, what are people saying when they call the city or report nice things? I just kind of want to keep it positive. Any intel or insight on that?
I feel like we haven't learned enough about compliments. I often joke it's the often forgotten C of the project. Right? We're just so focused.
It's 6% though.
It is.
Most 6% of the pool of the things that we considered complaints, compliments, and comments are compliments, which is fine, I feel like.
So now that we actually have, yeah, that data is really critical. That's a good one. I think people still like to be responded to generally with compliments, and there's also that other side of like, I just want to share this and kind of make sure it trickles down. I think yeah, that's a really good question, but ultimately I don't think has been one of our main focuses, so to speak.
Well, sounds like a future Civic Tech presentation.
There we go.
Thanks, Luke. And time for one more question online.
All right, and then we have also Ingrid. Ingrid, are you there? Would you like to ask your question?
Hi. Sorry, I put it in the chat. My question is, how many divisions are integrated? Which ones are the 4?
Yeah, I think we should yeah, so Toronto Water, Solid Waste Management, Transportation Services, MLS, only tasks for complaints, which is animal services. So just to specify there, because I know also the area that you're interested in. So just that's a good specification for us. And did we miss any of them? Ourselves, technically, CXD. And yeah, that's all of them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, one more online.
Great.
Oh, and next we have Manpreet.
Hi, I got a quick question. The reason of asking this question is from City of Edmonton 311. One of the challenges that we have is the integration of how 311 integrates with different departments across the organization. Now, City of Edmonton gets similar about 1 million tickets a year. But we talked about, I think, something along the lines of software elements in the presentation. Can you speak about the overall challenges that potentially 311 at City of Toronto has while integrating with different departments? Are there any process challenges that you were able to uncover as part of service design, or software challenges you were able to uncover as part of service design, and how were you able to overcome some of those pieces?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so 311 or CXD, we use an enterprise-wide system to manage all our requests, but that's not necessarily what our divisions are using in the back end. And divisions also have their own transformation projects ultimately happening at the same time. So you really have to figure out not only your own timelines, but your partner division timelines, and if somehow you can put on the table for them to consider using the software that you're using, but if they're using a different software, then building into not only the project timelines, but also the resourcing to make sure that you can then set up the proper integration channels so that the two systems speak to each other. I think that's probably the biggest challenge, and just also learnings in terms of overcoming. I think when it comes to bringing these specific complaints online, what was helpful is that they were already integrated through the phone channel, and it made it a lot easier to bring them forward. I think what will be tricky is that we have a lot of other divisions who don't necessarily use any systems to manage their complaints. So we'll have to we have a lot of work ahead of us in terms of making sure that we bring everybody online and in a way that's beneficial not only to the public, but also our divisional partners. I think Lisa might add something else.
Yeah, I think those might be challenges you're familiar with if you're coming from the city of Edmonton, but I might get a little specific without going over the line. So, I mean, as you can imagine, we're the front door, we're customer service branch, right? Like my thing is I have a one-to-one relationship with my customer. I'm taking in their information. The different organizations that we work have varying amounts of process or maturity. Some use systems, some don't. And so it at the end of the day, I feel like overcoming it is about believing in the value of what you're putting forward and what partnership is going to bring to the public ultimately, and just being super patient, being patient with people to take the time that they need to come around to new processes, or recognize if, you know, if a resource is going to be a bump right now, what does that look like for us to work together so that we can all procure the resources we need to do the thing. Because I think, you know, sometimes those things are misaligned. Like, we've been asked to do a project and then over there's nothing to support it, right? Like things like that happen all the time. But I would just say that's kind of like the biggest piece. And I do think there's an element of it that just feels so simple from the outside. And I just can't stress it enough. And then I'm like, oh, and now I'm the person explaining to my friends why it took me 6 months to bring a form online, right? Like, so I think, yeah, that's definitely it. And I think there's been such an element in beauty, because I mean, I'm just this person sitting in the middle being like, I optimize for the operation of the people taking up the phones, but it's been deeply meaningful to engage in the actual operations. Like, oh my God, that person, they pick up 3 million trash bins up every single week, and learn about what that's like to really ultimately, as a designer, surface up every human in this process and be like, oh, you know what? They need this really specific button when they open the mobile app. Like, just hearing them on that, I think, has been deeply important in moving these things forward. But we probably have very similar challenges.